Ever get that sinking feeling on Sunday evenings as another weekend passes by and a new work week draws closer? Back to that office cubicle, or that cash register, or those demanding Karens, customers. But as bad as that sounds, there are some truly terrifying jobs out there that make even the worst customer service jobs look easy. From crocodile stuntman to daring electrical engineers, join me as we uncover the most dangerous and scariest jobs in the world. Crocodile stuntman. With their terrifying teeth, keen hunting sense, and bite force strong enough to snap bone, crocodiles are one of the deadliest critters on the planet. And the Siamese crocodile is no different. Native to Southeast Asia, these crocs can reach 13 feet long and have a mouth packed with 64 super sharp teeth. Yikes! But apparently, that's not a problem for workers at Thailand's Samphan Elephant Ground and Zoo. Here, it's fair to say the employees get very familiar with the Siamese crocs, because one of the main attractions at the zoo is crocodile wrestling. If that wasn't dangerous enough, they also perform stunts, like sticking their hands and even heads between the open jaws of the crocs. Whatever these workers are getting paid, it's definitely not enough. Crazy as it sounds, the zoo has been running these stunts since 1985, with the scary show taking place twice daily. With so many shows, you won't be surprised to know that these crocodile stunts haven't always gone to plan. In 2018, a crocodile bit a trainer's arm during a performance. Thankfully, the bite wasn't too serious and the stuntman was back working 2 weeks later. Nonetheless, I wouldn't be too snappy if that was my job. Mad Honey Harvester. At first glance, the Kashgar and Himalayan mountains look like the ideal destination to appreciate the beauty of nature. But serene as the scene looks, workers risk their lives in these mountains every single day. Bees that feed on rhododendron plants growing in these mountainous regions produce something called mad honey. This mud-red honey has become popular for the buzz it can give consumers, and being in high demand, the stuff can sell for up to $80 a pound. There's one teeny tiny problem though. The rhododendrons flourish at high altitudes, meaning the bees nest on cliffs way up the mountain. So workers have to collect honey from the cliff face itself, some 300 feet off the ground. But that ain't the half of it. Workers don't use harnesses to prevent their fall or cherry pickers to make honey harvesting easier. They're mainly from one isolated rural Nepalese tribe called Gurung, and they collect the honey the same way they have for hundreds of years, with rudimentary tools. As such, all they tend to use is rope ladders made from bamboo. The ladder is nailed into the mountain before the honey harvesters climb down from above and reach the terrifying treasure on the cliff face below. Of course, they've got to deal with the threat of the bees as well. The Himalayan giant honeybee, the critter responsible for producing mad honey, is the world's largest honeybee, measuring a spine-crawling 1.2 inches in length. As you can imagine, having thousands of these things trying to sting you all while you're dangling 300 feet in the air isn't easy work. Man, how good must this stuff taste? But bulky bees aren't the only animals that mad honey harvesters need to watch out for. Brown bears, those 9-foot-long, 1,300-pound beasts, also lurk in these mountainous regions. Scary as that might sound, this might be the best area to cross one of these giants. I mean, take a look at this poor cub who ate a little too much mad honey. He is out of it. All in all, mad honey harvesting seems like a pretty unbearable job. Mount Everest guides. Turns out honey harvesting isn't the only dangerous career in the Himalayan mountains. Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, is a peak in the Himalayan mountain range. Sherpas, an indigenous tribe of people from the region who are adept at traversing the area, are often employed to guide eager mountaineers up Everest. Temperatures on the mountain can plunge to negative 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Considering that hypothermia can set in at temperatures of 10 degrees Fahrenheit, this place ain't for the faint of heart. There's also the risk of encountering avalanches, which can contain up to 1 million tons of snow. Sounds pretty risky, right? And that's before we've even got to the infamous Khumbu Icefall. This 2.5-mile stretch of constantly moving ice is so unstable it's known for house-sized ice slabs crashing down onto the path and 150 feet deep crevices that climbers have to tentatively cross over via ladders. It's so hazardous, there have been 47 recorded casualties in this stretch of the Everest Trail alone between 1953 and 2023. On top of acting as guides along the heinous hike, Sherpas are often employed to carry mountaineers' food, tents, and oxygen canisters, risking their own lives so explorers can summit the mountain. Sadly, in the last century, almost 100 Sherpa have perished while helping mountaineers trek Everest. You'd think at least these guys would get a hefty payout for evading avalanches, dodging ice slabs, and crossing eerie crevices. I mean, after all, Western guides from the likes of the UK and USA who work on Everest pocket around $50,000 per season. However, Sherpas tend to make just 10% of that total, barely enough money to support their families. So just so I'm clear, this job is incredibly risky, arduous, and the pay is bad. I think it might be time to let the tourists find their own way to the top. Alaskan crab fishermen. Ah, fishing. The relaxing ripples of the water and the gentle tug of the line. Bliss, isn't it? Well, not if you're fishing for Alaskan crab. For these fishermen, fishing isn't about unwinding, but surviving. Alaskan king crab fishing has over 300 fatalities per 100,000 workers each year. That's almost double the fatality rate of loggers at 132 fatalities per 100,000 workers. But what makes this such a perilous profession? Well, the rough seas off the Alaskan coast, where the king crab can be found, present some serious dangers. Here, rough waves can rise above the ship's deck some 45 feet, while the 70-mile-per-hour winds can sweep workers off their footing. If that wasn't tough enough, temperatures can drop below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning the fishermen are often wet, windswept, and frozen. Sounds like the unholy trinity. Hauling up crab catches also puts workers at risk of falling overboard, and with the water temperature being as low as 30 degrees Fahrenheit, anyone lost at sea will do well to survive for 5 minutes in the freezing waters. If all that wasn't threatening enough, workers can also get caught up in the coil lines that haul up the 800-pound catches, leading to broken bones or even traumatic brain injuries. And that sounds even more painful when you consider they're in the middle of the sea, hundreds of miles away from a hospital. Yep, doesn't matter how injured you are, you won't be seeing a doctor anytime soon. Treacherous as this job sounds, there's one upside: the pay. Fishermen can make as much as $50,000 from just a few days of king crab catching. Safe to say that wage is fit for a king. You know what else is fit for a king? Well, not to brag, but my videos. So don't be shy. Hit those like and subscribe buttons down below to keep on binging all my amazing content. Underwater welder. Tough as the job of an Alaskan crab fisherman sounds, they do at least have the luxury of a boat. The same can't be said for the guy tasked with cleaning this pier. I mean, this looks more like torture than a legal occupation. Like this hard worker, underwater welders also work in the sea, joining or repairing underwater equipment, pipelines, and infrastructure. Toiling at depths as low as 1,300 feet, underwater welders aren't alone down there in the deep dark water. Exhibit A.
Pan up. That is awesome. What is that doing? Darren, you alright?
Darren does not sound alright, and I don't blame him. That's a poor beagle shark, a 12-foot long, up to 600-pound beast that's a relative of the great white shark. But that's not even the half of it. Working at these depths, they need strong lights to view the structures they're working on, but these lights attract plankton, which entice fish, and their predators. And even if underwater welders are desperate to escape a shark-infested zone, they can't leave in a hurry. When a diver descends to these depths, the increasing water pressure causes more nitrogen to be absorbed into the body's tissues. As divers ascend, the surrounding water pressure decreases and the absorbed nitrogen starts to form bubbles. If the ascent is too quick, these bubbles can accumulate in the bloodstream, leading to decompression sickness. Usually, this results in dizziness, headaches, confusion, fatigue, and numbness. Not something you'd want to experience 1,300 feet underwater, with a shark chasing you down, no less. On the plus side, underwater welders typically earn between $100,000 to $200,000 per year. Even so, you could triple that, and you still wouldn't find me working anywhere near a shark in the deep dark ocean. Lighthouse keeper. Another scary sea-related job is that of a lighthouse keeper. Until the invention of the light bulb, the light in the lighthouse typically came from a flame. A blaze in a confined building? Totally sounds safe. One example of how dangerous this could be was witnessed in 1755 at Eddystone Lighthouse off the coast of southern England. Henry Hall, a 95-year-old lighthouse keeper, discovered that a spark from the light's lantern had ignited the top of the tower. As Hall looked up to throw a bucket of water on the blaze, a stream of molten lead poured down from the roof right into his face and throat. Ouch! Miraculously, he got out of the lighthouse alive, but sadly he passed away 12 days later with half a pound of solid lead stuffed in his stomach. Even in more recent times, the job of a lighthouse keeper is still fraught with danger. Lighthouses are placed in exposed areas that suffer from fierce waves due to their ragged coastlines, allowing ship captains to navigate around them or pinpoint their position by identifying their locations. But big and bulky as they may look, these structures aren't immortal. With batterings from waves, lighthouse structures can wear down over time. Take the Whale Rock Light, a lighthouse off Rhode Island. It stood tall for over 50 years before whopping waves from the New England hurricane of 1938 ripped the structure in two, tragically sending keeper Walter Eberly down with much of the structure. Despite these horror stories, lighthouse keepers aren't rewarded too well either, with the average worker pocketing just $45,000 a year. Man, this job really isn't light work. Iron workers. From the Eiffel Tower to the Empire State Building, our world is filled with some jaw-dropping structures. But have you ever thought about how these monuments were first erected? After all, every big building comes with a structural framework. Well, it's the job of iron workers to install the metal support pieces for new buildings as well as repair and renovate old structures. But building the framework for these things ain't easy. In all, this profession has 47 fatalities for every 100,000 workers. Iron workers tend to work hundreds of feet in the air with just a harness, most of the time preventing them from becoming a splat on the pavement. That's not even mentioning the crazy conditions these workers can face. I mean, imagine walking along a single iron beam hundreds of feet in the air while strong winds are threatening to push you off the side. He shouldn't look that relaxed. But it's not just the threat of things below that iron workers need to watch out for. There's also the risk of giant swinging iron beams crashing into them, turning their 9 to 5 into some wicked wipeout course hundreds of feet in the air. So next time you take a trip to the Eiffel Tower or marvel at the Empire State Building, spare thought for those lion-hearted laborers that constructed these stunning structures in the first place. Lumberjack. For most of us, a walk through the forest gives us a chance to unwind and feel at one with nature. But after hearing about this next occupation, your next woodland walk may not be so peaceful. With an insane fatal work injury rate of 82 per 100,000, lumberjacking isn't a job for the faint-hearted, and it's not hard to see why. On a daily basis, they handle chainsaws, chippers, choppers, basically equipment that can turn anyone into mincemeat in an instant. But those menacing machines aren't the only dangers they face. There's also the very real risk of lumberjacks being crushed by trees, considering most of their job is chopping them down. And since the average tree lumberjacks work with can weigh up to 5 tons, it's definitely not something you'd want to fall on you. And while lumberjacks use cutting techniques to help direct the fall of a tree, they can't always predict which way it'll fall. Whoa, that's what happens when you cut into a rotten tree and it begins to break apart before it falls. Hella dangerous to be anywhere in the vicinity of, let alone directly underneath it. If that wasn't metal enough, some lumberjacks even hike their way up trees to cut away loose branches. As a result, they can expect tree parts falling down on them all while they're at dizzying heights. If you replay that clip, you can actually hear the disappointment as that tree takes out the garden fence below instead of landing in the cleared area this lumberjack assumed it would fall into. Well, seeing how dangerous it is, how much do you reckon these guys get paid? $100,000? $200,000? Amazingly, the average lumberjack is paid around just $50,000 a year. Fair to say, for that price, that's a job I would not consider. Smoke jumper. By the name alone, you know firefighting is a perilous job. I mean, battling a burning building or wading into a fire doesn't sound safe no matter how you phrase it. Well, scary as it sounds, what if I told you it's nothing compared to the job of a smoke jumper? If you didn't know, smoke jumpers are essentially firefighters who jump out of airplanes. Yep, while for many skydiving is their biggest fear, that's just part of a smoke jumper's everyday. Let me explain. Smoke jumpers are specially trained wildland firefighters tasked with putting out remote wildland fires where roads and rail can't reach. Aircraft fly over the forest fire before the smoke jumpers parachute out, landing in what looks like hell on earth. When the smoke jumpers land, firefighting supplies are parachuted down to help them tackle the blaze. But how exactly do you stop a fire without the aid of fire hydrants or fire trucks? Well, smoke jumpers create a fire break. This is a zone that interrupts the fire's fuel source, which they do by quickly cutting down trees and digging trenches in the direction the fire is traveling. Being such a high-risk and high-skilled job, only about 400 smoke jumpers currently work for the US government. You'd imagine those chosen few would be pretty well compensated, but these guys are typically paid just $50,000 per fire season. Man, you'd think they'd be rewarded more generously for nosediving down to deal with whopping wildfires. Bridge builders. Whether it's San Francisco's Golden Gate Bridge or London's Tower Bridge, the world's filled with some jaw-dropping crossings. These crazy constructions are the result of bridge builders who risk their lives all so you can make it safely across to the other side. Take Ice High Bridge in China, for example. This beastie bridge is almost 4,000 feet long, but that's not the most jaw-dropping thing about this superstructure. The bridge stretches over a canyon 1,102 feet in the air, meaning workers building this thing were at a height greater than that of the top of the Eiffel Tower. As you can imagine, the main risk of bridge building from such heights is the fall. One wrong step could lead to a 10-second freefall to Pancake Town, if you get my drift. While workers are usually secured by a harness to stop them from crashing to their end, photos taken on site reveal that wasn't always the case at Ice High Bridge. Across the Pacific Ocean, you'll find New York's Brooklyn Bridge, one of the world's most well-recognized crossings. But did you know about this place's lesser-known horrific history? Sadly, the project that was completed in 1883 took at least 27 lives. Several workmen left this mortal coil after large chunks of stone fell during the construction of the bridge's towers, while others accidentally fell from the towers themselves. If that doesn't sound grisly enough, workers risk their lives for just $2 a day, less than $45 in today's money. Fortunately, nowadays, bridge builders are able to pocket around $60,000 a year. Still, regardless of how much money I'd make, bridge building definitely isn't an occupation I want to cross. Line worker. Have you ever been in the middle of a Be Amazed video when all of a sudden, blackout? Pretty annoying, isn't it? But if you thought it was bad for you, spare a thought for the workers in charge of fixing the power outages. Line workers are responsible for carrying out repair work to high voltage power lines to restore electricity. To start with, they're tasked with scaling utility poles, which, depending on the height and accessibility of the surrounding terrain, can be a machine-assisted ride or a freehand climb. Take these weary workers from Guangdong in South China, who had the unenviable job of repairing a power line that reached a giddying 3,280 feet above sea level. But the disturbing drop isn't the only thing these guys need to be cautious of. Usually power lines fault in extreme weather, like a storm or wildfire. Unfortunately for line workers, that means they face falling debris, slippery surfaces, and heavy gusts of wind, just in case climbing hundreds or even thousands of feet up wasn't terrifying enough. Yet the greatest threat to a line worker's life isn't the height or crazy conditions, but the electrical lines themselves. Power lines that are damaged or improperly handled can cause electrical burns or even electrocution. And considering that line workers typically work with electrical systems that carry at least 11,000 volts, that's not going to be too pleasant. Just 2,700 volts are usually fatal, so imagine the damage that 11,000 volts passing through your body can do. With all these risks, it's no surprise that 42 out of every 100,000 line workers pass away on the job each year, while a further 2,400 per 100,000 suffer serious injuries. On the plus side, these guys bag close to $80,000 every year on average. Still, that doesn't stop line workers from having a shocking occupation. Manual scavenger. Have you ever had a traumatic bowel movement? Luckily, with a flush, you can forget it ever happened. Unless you're one of the sewage workers tasked with manually unblocking sewers. In India, manual scavengers clear blocked sewers using their bare hands. Not only is this job gross enough to make you hurl, it's also deadly, with over 100 manual scavengers in India biting the dust each year. You'd guess that might be from disease or illness, but no, that's 100 people who perished in sewers and septic tanks on the job. Undoubtedly, it's disgusting, but what makes this job so deadly? Well, manual scavengers enter into sewage manholes and septic tanks without any protective gear. All they have to unblock pipes is their bare hands. Even worse, they have to regularly submerge their entire bodies in raw sewage, meaning they often get a face full of feces. Man, I need a moment. Unfortunately, drowning is another grim possibility for these workers. In fact, it's the leading cause of death for manual scavengers, with many sinking in human waste that can go down 20 feet deep. Surprisingly, human waste isn't the only thing these workers need to be weary of. The dark, putrid places are also home to sinister spiders and even venomous snakes, including cobras. Can you imagine submerging yourself in human waste and then you pop your head up and there's a cobra hissing at you? Creepy crawlies aren't the only danger lurking in these underground sewers, though. Sewer gas, a nasty smelling mixture of toxic gases like methane and sulfur dioxide, toxify the air in these sewers. While that may not seem as scary as a snake, it can be far more harmful, with many manual scavengers falling unconscious due to the lack of oxygen in the underground chambers. To top it all off, manual scavengers earn the equivalent to just 12 cents for a day's worth of labor. I don't want to hear any complaints about office jobs ever again. Sulfur miner. As I speak, there are roughly 50 volcanoes all over the world erupting. Some are just releasing plumes of steam, while others are spurting out tons of lava reaching more than 2,140 degrees Fahrenheit. Either way, best not to get too close, right? Well, try telling that to these miners from Ijen in Indonesia. These guys have the job of mining away at Ijen Volcano. The question is, what exactly are these guys mining? After all, miners usually dig underground to extract things like coal or gold. Instead, these workers are after sulfur, a common household ingredient used in everything from matches to batteries. Molten sulfur is tapped from inside the rock surrounding the volcano using metal pipes that bring the stuff to the surface, where it cools into a hard yellow solid. The workers then hack the solid sulfur into smaller lumps before collecting it in wicker baskets on their backs. In all, they carry around 200 pounds of sulfur, more than their body weight, back from the volcano. To make the work even more grueling, the temperatures here reach over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Man, that makes even the most grueling spreadsheet look tempting. But the heavy load and high heat is the least of these workers' worries. The sulfur smoke in the air is incredibly unpleasant. Not only does it smell like rotten eggs, it's also incredibly irritable. Unfortunately, most of the miners can't afford safety equipment, with many simply protecting themselves with a rag over their face. As a result, many miners suffer from pharyngitis and inflammation of the back of the throat, as well as scars on their body from touching and carrying sulfur. Sadly, due to the horrific working conditions, many sulfur miners don't make it past the age of 50. What's the reward for such life-threatening work? Just $15 a day. That's a volcano from me. Pizza delivery driver. There's nothing better in life than freshly delivered, warm, cheesy pizza. Oh. Sorry. That doesn't mean your delightful deep dish always arrives at your door smoothly, though. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, a pizza delivery driver is at higher risk of injury or death than a police officer. In all, 25 out of every 100,000 pizza delivery drivers meet their maker on the job every year. So what's so dangerous about pizza delivery? For starters, these guys have to deliver dinner in all sorts of wild weather. Take this heroic delivery driver who risked his life during a typhoon, all so someone could chomp down on some dinner. Even in perfect conditions, these guys aren't safe. Take a look at this.
Hey, how you doing today?
Man, that squirrel really must have been craving some stuffed crust. In all seriousness though, many other pizza delivery drivers face some severe threats on the road, putting them at risk of traffic accidents. But that's not the only problem these guys face. Shockingly, 17% of pizza delivery driver fatalities occur due to intentional injuries from assault, robbery, or homicide. Not because criminals are looking to steal a slice of pizza, but because delivery drivers are well known to work with cash. As a result, crooks target them to get their hands on some easy money. Well, I can confidently say I don't want a pizza that job. Okay, that's about all the danger I can handle for one day. Phew. Which job do you think you'd be brave enough to handle? Let me know down in the comments below, and thanks for watching.